Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Sand. Dominic Mercer stared at the photograph on his desk, his smiling family from 3 summers ago, at Lake Tahoe. The sunlight caught in his daughter Zoe's auburn hair, identical to his own. His wife Nora's smile, pristine, yet somehow distant even then. Strange how photographs captured more truth than memory sometimes. The Mercers were respected in the coastal town of Harborview, Maine. Dominic had built his construction business from nothing into the region's premier firm. At 42, he had everything he thought he wanted: a successful business, a beautiful colonial home overlooking the Atlantic, and a family he would die for. Especially Zoe. His phone vibrated. Another text from Nora, running late again. Client emergency. Don't wait up. 3rd time this week. It was Tuesday. Dominic ran a weathered hand through his hair. At the office, he was known for his calculating mind and unwavering stance. The man who could stare down city officials and rival contractors without blinking. The lion who protected his pride. His employees called him the commander behind his back, a nickname he pretended not to know about, but secretly appreciated. At home, he'd become something else, a ghost drifting through empty rooms, leaving notes for a wife who was never there, cooking dinners that went cold. Dad. Zoe stood in the doorway of his home office, 16, and already so perceptive. Too perceptive. She's not coming home for dinner again, is she? Dominic forced a smile. Client emergency. Zoe's green eyes, Nora's eyes, narrowed. You know that's bullshit, right? Language, he said automatically, then sighed. Let's order pizza. Extra mushrooms. Light on the criticism of your mother. I recorded the mileage on her car, Zoe said, ignoring him. Last week she said she had a showing in Brunswick. That's 28 miles round trip. Her car showed 54 new miles. Dominic felt a chill. His daughter shouldn't have to be the one investigating her mother's whereabouts. He tried not to let Zoe see the cracks in the marriage, but she was too smart to fool. It's complicated, Zobert. It's really not, she countered. She's lying. Question is, why are you letting her? The truth was both simple and impossible to explain. 6 years ago, Dominic had nearly lost everything. A building collapse had killed 2 workers, an accident ruled as no fault of Mercer Construction, but the lawsuits and investigations had nearly bankrupted them. The stress had triggered a darkness in Dominic he never knew existed. Drinking, rages that frightened even himself. Nora had stayed, had helped him rebuild. He owed her for that. Or at least, that's what he told himself. Your mother and I are working through some things, he said carefully. Adult things. Zoe rolled her eyes. I'm not a child. And whatever debt you think you owe her was paid years ago. She tossed a small notebook on his desk. I've been keeping track for 3 months. Times, mileage, excuses. You should read it. Before he could respond, she was gone, leaving Dominic staring at the notebook like it was a live grenade. Later that night, after Zoe had gone to bed, Dominic sat on his back deck watching the moonlight dance across the water. The notebook lay open beside him, each meticulous entry a dagger. Nora's car pulled into the driveway at 11:42 p.m., the headlights briefly illuminating his stoic figure on the deck before shutting off. He heard her enter the house, the familiar routine of keys in the bowl, heels kicked off. She'd shower before coming to bed, washing away the scent of whoever she'd been with. Dominic didn't move. The old Dominic would have confronted her, would have raged. But that Dominic nearly destroyed everything once before. This Dominic was smarter. Patience had rebuilt his business. Patience would show him the whole truth here. He slipped the notebook into his pocket and went inside, the taste of betrayal bitter on his tongue. Chapter 2. The Other Man. Abbott Hayes had come to Harborview 2 years ago, opening a high-end art gallery that catered to the wealthy summer residents. Tall, sophisticated, with salt and pepper hair and tailored clothes, Hayes had the kind of New York polish that stood out in their coastal town. Dominic had met him exactly twice. Once at a Chamber of Commerce event where Hayes had spoken passionately about revitalizing the cultural scene in Harborview. The second time was at a school fundraiser where Hayes had donated a valuable painting. Nora, as one of the town's top real estate agents, had been on the committee. Now, sitting in his truck across from the gallery, Dominic watched as Hayes locked up, checking his watch repeatedly. It was 7:15 p.m. According to Nora's text, she was showing a property to out-of-town buyers until 9. Hayes walked briskly down the sidewalk, not toward his apartment above the gallery, but toward the municipal parking lot. Dominic waited, then followed at a distance. 3 blocks away, Hayes entered the Portside Inn, an upscale restaurant with private dining rooms overlooking the harbor. Dominic parked and waited 15 minutes before entering. The maitre d' recognized him immediately. "Mr. Mercer, we haven't seen you in ages. Table for 1 tonight." "Just meeting someone at the bar," Dominic said smoothly. From his position at the bar, Dominic had a clear view of the private dining rooms. Through the glass walls, he saw them. Hayes and Nora, intimate in a corner booth, his hand covering hers on the table. The way she laughed, head thrown back, more alive than he'd seen her in years. Dominic ordered a club soda and watched. Not with rage, but with cold, clinical detachment. He'd suspected, of course. Zoe's notebook had confirmed it. But seeing it, that was different. That made it real. His phone buzzed. A text from Zoe. "Where are you?" He replied, "Working late. Order whatever you want for dinner. Love you." Dominic paid for his drink and left without being noticed. In his truck, he sat motionless, hands gripping the steering wheel. The commander was assessing the battlefield, calculating moves and counter-moves. It wasn't just the affair. People had affairs. Marriages ended. But Nora had been distant from Zoe too, missing her track meets, forgetting parent-teacher conferences. Whatever was happening with Hayes had consumed her completely. Dominic started the engine and drove home, an eerie calm settling over him. He wouldn't confront Nora yet. First, he needed to understand what he was really dealing with. The next day, Dominic made some inquiries. Abbott Hayes wasn't what he appeared to be. The gallery was struggling financially despite its prestigious address. Hayes himself had a string of failed businesses in Boston and New York. More concerning were the rumors of wealthy women who had invested in his ventures, only to lose everything when Hayes moved on. Was that what this was? Was Hayes using Nora to access her client list of wealthy homeowners? Or was there something more sinister at play? That evening, Dominic took Zoe for ice cream, something they hadn't done since she was much younger. "So you finally read my notebook?" she said, stabbing her spoon into her sundae. "I did. And I'm handling it. But I need you to be careful around your mother right now. Don't let on that we suspect anything." Zoe's eyebrows shot up. "We? So we're a team now." Dominic nodded solemnly. "Always have been, kiddo. Are you going to divorce her?" The directness of the question caught him off guard. "I don't know yet. There's more going on than just what you think is going on." "You mean her sleeping with that pretentious gallery guy?" Dominic nearly choked on his ice cream. "Zoe, Dad, I'm 16. I know what adults do." She shook her head. "Mom thinks I don't notice anything, that I'm still a little kid. But I hear her phone calls when she thinks I'm not listening. I've seen her with him in town. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Zoe looked down. "I thought you knew and were just accepting it. Like you were afraid to be alone or something." The pain in her voice cut him to the core. While he'd been playing the patient, calculating businessman, his daughter had been suffering, thinking he was too weak to stand up for himself, for them. "I need you to trust me now," he said firmly. "Whatever's happening, I'm going to handle it. But I need time to figure out exactly what we're dealing with." Zoe studied him, a small smile forming. "The commander's back, huh?" Dominic reached across the table and squeezed her hand. He never left. He was just gathering intelligence. For the first time in months, Zoe laughed, and Dominic felt something crack inside him. He would protect her, whatever it took. Chapter 3: Whispers and Shadows. The coastal autumn painted Harborview in russet and gold, but for Dominic, the world had narrowed to a series of clandestine observations. For 2 weeks, he documented the affair, dates, times, locations. It was no longer just about Nora's infidelity. Something about Hayes bothered him at a primal level. "You should just confront them," Miguel Santos said as they inspected the framework of their latest project, a luxury home overlooking the cliffs. Miguel had been Dominic's right-hand man for 15 years, the only person besides Zoe who knew the full situation. "Not yet," Dominic replied, checking the level on a beam. "There's something else going on." Miguel frowned. "Like what?" "I don't know exactly. But Hayes has been asking Nora about my business, my clients. And yesterday, I overheard Nora on the phone talking about Zoe like she was an obstacle." "An obstacle to what?" Dominic shook his head. "That's what I need to find out." That evening, Dominic installed a small recording device in Nora's home office, a line he never thought he'd cross, but his instincts were screaming that Zoe might be in danger. Not physical danger, Perhaps, but something wasn't right. The first recordings revealed nothing unusual: client calls, scheduling appointments. But on the third day, he struck gold. "I can't just leave." Nora's voice came through clearly. "It's complicated. Zoe's attached to her father, and there's the prenup." Hayes' voice. "The prenup only applies if you divorce. If you were to leave voluntarily, that's different." "What are you suggesting?" "Nothing illegal. But men like Dominic, with his history. What if he had another incident? Another breakdown? If he became unstable, threatened you, threatened Zoe?" "Abbott, no. I won't do that to him. You won't have to do anything. Just be ready when the opportunity presents itself. With his temper, it's only a matter of time before he gives us what we need. And with his past, who would question it if he became violent? But Zoe, once he's gone, she'll adjust. Or if she's too difficult, boarding school is always an option. My contact at Westridge Academy says they have openings for the spring semester. Sending her away seems extreme. Not sending her away, giving her opportunities, and giving us a fresh start. The California property needs someone with your expertise to make it viable. We could build something amazing there, Nora. Together, without anchors holding us down." The recording continued, detailing how Hayes planned to use Nora's real estate expertise to develop a property in California, funded by investors he'd lined up, including money from the sale of the Mercers' home and business. They spoke of a fresh start that clearly didn't include Zoe. Dominic listened 3 times, his blood running colder with each replay. They were planning to provoke him into a rage, document it, use his past against him in a custody battle, then ship Zoe off to boarding school while they started a new life with his money. He was still processing this when Zoe burst into his office, her face pale. "Dad, I heard Mom talking to Hayes. They're planning something bad." Dominic nodded grimly. "I know. I recorded them." Her eyes widened. "You bug Mom's office? That's actually badass." Despite everything, he smiled. "Don't get any ideas. This is a one-time emergency situation. So what do we do now? Call the police." Dominic shook his head. "They haven't done anything illegal yet. It's just talk. And with my history," he didn't need to finish the thought. During his darkest period after the accident, he'd been in therapy, on medication. If Nora claimed he was unstable, those records could be used against him. So they're just going to get away with it? Zoe demanded, anger flashing in her eyes. "No," Dominic said quietly. "They're not getting away with anything. Especially not you." That night, Dominic couldn't sleep. Hayes' voice played on repeat in his mind. If he became unstable, threatened you, threatened Zoe. They wanted to provoke him, to make him lose control. The old Dominic would have walked right into that trap, confronted them in a blind rage. But he wasn't that man anymore. The commander didn't charge into battle without a strategy, and he now had something they didn't expect: advanced knowledge of their plan. As dawn broke over the Atlantic, Dominic made his decision. He wouldn't give them what they wanted. Instead, he would give them enough rope to hang themselves. Chapter 4. Recorded Intentions. Late October brought early darkness and a sense of foreboding to the Mercer household. Nora had grown bolder in her absences, sometimes not returning until well after midnight. Dominic maintained his facade of oblivious husband, occasionally asking about her day with just the right amount of disinterest. The recording device in Nora's office had yielded more damning conversations. Hayes was pressuring her to move faster, to secure investors for their California venture before the Harborview opportunity disappeared. Whatever that meant, it couldn't be good. Zoe had taken to carrying her phone everywhere, recording any interaction with her mother. "Evidence," she explained to Dominic. "Just in case." Dominic worried about the toll this was taking on her. No 16-year-old should have to document her mother's betrayal. But Zoe had inherited his determination along with his auburn hair. "I heard something today," she said one evening as they shared takeout in his office, away from Nora's prying ears. Mom was on the phone with Hayes. They were talking about some investors coming to town next week, people who want to meet the whole family before committing to their project. "The whole family?" Dominic frowned. "Including me?" "That's the weird part." Hayes said something like, "Dominic won't be a problem by then." And Mom laughed. Zoe's hands trembled slightly. "Dad, what does that mean?" Dominic's mind raced. "When exactly are these investors arriving?" "Next Thursday. Hayes is hosting a dinner at his gallery." Next Thursday was when Dominic was scheduled to visit a remote job site in northern Maine, a 3-hour drive each way. An overnight trip he'd planned weeks ago. Have you noticed your mother doing anything unusual lately? Besides the obvious, he added. Zoe thought for a moment. She's been organizing papers in her office at night. And she asked me weird questions about your medication. What medication? The stuff you used to take. After the accident. She wanted to know if you still had any, if you ever took it when you were stressed. A chill ran through him. The sleeping pills and anti-anxiety medication he'd been prescribed years ago. He'd stopped taking them long ago, but had never disposed of the bottles. Zoe, I need you to do something for me. Something important. The next day, while Nora was showing properties, Zoe searched her mother's office and Nora's private email account, using a password Nora didn't know Zoe had discovered months ago. What she found confirmed their worst fears. Nora had been researching the side effects of Dominic's old medications, particularly how they interacted with alcohol. There were emails to Hayes discussing how emotional distress and chemical imbalance could lead to unpredictable behavior. Most disturbing was an email drafted but not sent to Nora's sister in California. If anything happens while D is on his trip, please be ready to take Z for a while until things settle down. They're going to try to make it look like you had another breakdown, Zoe said, her voice shaking with anger. Like you what? Drove off the road? Hurt yourself? Or hurt someone else? Dominic said quietly. The pieces were falling into place. Hayes mentioned the Harborview opportunity disappearing. I think they're planning to use my land for their development. If I were out of the picture, ruled unstable or worse, and you were sent away, Nora would control everything. That's insane. It's like a bad movie plot. People do crazy things for money and fresh starts, Dominic said, remembering Hayes' words on the recording. But they've made a critical error. What's that? They underestimated both of us. He squeezed her shoulder. And we're going to use that against them. That night, while Dominic worked late in his office, Zoe crept through the darkened house with her phone, its recording function activated. She'd heard Nora on the phone earlier, arranging to meet Hayes at the house while Dominic was working. From her hiding place in the laundry room adjacent to the kitchen, she heard them enter. Are you sure he won't come home early? Hayes' voice, tense with nervous energy. He never leaves the office before 10 on Wednesdays. We have time. Nora's voice, impatient. Did you bring it? It's all here. The pills, ground up like you asked. Untraceable once mixed with enough alcohol. And you're sure about the dosage? I don't want him just sick. I need him completely erratic. Trust me, this will make him lose control completely. When the investors see him like that, they'll back me. Us, immediately. No one wants to partner with a mentally unstable contractor. And if he doesn't take the bait, if he doesn't drink it, then we move to plan B. But this is cleaner. A public meltdown, followed by a convenient accident during his trip. With his history, no one will question it. Zoe's hand trembled so badly, she nearly dropped her phone. They were planning to drug her father, humiliate him publicly, then stage an accident. Her own mother was discussing her father's death in their kitchen. What about Zoe? Nora asked, her voice softer now. She'll be devastated. Kids are resilient. And Westridge Academy has an excellent counseling program. By summer, she'll have adjusted. Meanwhile, we'll be breaking ground in California. I just never thought it would come to this, Nora sighed. I wanted a clean break. There's no such thing when this much money is involved. The California investors need to see the Harborview project succeed first. They need to trust us. And they won't if your ex-husband is fighting us every step of the way. He's not my ex yet. Details. Once this is over, once the land is secured, we'll have everything we've talked about. The life you deserve. Their voices moved toward Nora's office, and Zoe slipped away, heart pounding. She had it all, their entire plan recorded. Proof that her mother and Hayes were plotting to drug her father and potentially cause his death. She sent the recording to Dominic immediately with a text. Listen now. They're planning to poison you. Dominic listened to the recording in his office, his face hardening with each word. Cold, calculated fury settled over him. Not the volatile rage that had once consumed him, but something more dangerous, more focused. They wanted to take his daughter, his business, his life, all while making it look like he'd destroyed himself. Not again. Never again. He called Miguel, his voice eerily calm. I need your help, and I need you not to ask questions. Not yet. Anything, boss. You know that. Good. Because we're going to need to make some arrangements. Quickly. Chapter 5, Vanishing Act. The dinner with Hayes investors was set for Thursday evening at 8 p.m. Dominic's trip to the northern job site was scheduled for Wednesday morning through Thursday afternoon. Plenty of time for him to return, shower, and join the dinner where they presumably planned to drug him. On Tuesday night, Dominic sat Zoe down for the most difficult conversation of his life. "I need you to trust me completely," he said, his voice steady despite the gravity of what he was asking. "Because what happens next will be frightening, but it's the only way to protect you and expose what they're planning." Zoe nodded, her young face solemn beyond her years. "I trust you, Dad. Tomorrow morning, I'll leave as planned. Except I won't be going to the job site." He laid out his plan, a plan so audacious it bordered on reckless, yet meticulously designed to give Nora and Hayes exactly what they wanted, his absence. "But won't that just help them?" Zoe asked, confused. "No, because I'm not going to disappear by accident. I'm going to vanish in a way that immediately raises suspicions about your mother." The next morning, Dominic left at dawn, kissing a sleeping Zoe on the forehead. As planned, he called her from the road, a conversation they knew Nora might overhear parts of. "I should be back by 4 tomorrow," he said. "Plenty of time before the dinner." "Be careful, Dad," Zoe replied, the double meaning clear between them. Dominic's truck was spotted heading north by several people who knew him. He stopped for coffee at his usual place, chatted with the barista, mentioned his overnight trip to check on the remote job site, all establishing his expected whereabouts. Then, 50 miles north of Harborview, the commander executed his strategic vanishing. Miguel was waiting at the predetermined location with a second vehicle. Dominic parked his truck at the scenic overlook near Rockport Cliffs, a spot known for its spectacular views and dangerous drops to the rocky shore below. He left his wallet on the seat, his jacket on a nearby rock, and a single boot print at the edge of the cliff where rain had softened the ground. Anyone finding the truck would draw the obvious conclusion: Dominic Mercer had stopped to admire the view and had somehow fallen. The dangerous currents below would explain why a body might not be recovered immediately or ever. By noon, Dominic was in a rented cabin 30 miles inland, paid for in cash by Miguel's cousin who owed him a favor. His phone was off, removed from his truck before abandoning it. Now it was Zoe's turn. At 3:27 p.m., Zoe called Nora in hysterics. "Mom, Dad was supposed to call when he arrived at the site. He's not answering his phone. Something's wrong." The panic in her voice wasn't entirely feigned. Despite knowing the plan, the reality of what they were doing, what they were about to put in motion, terrified her. Nora's response was tellingly measured. "I'm sure he's fine, honey. Probably just poor reception up there. But he always calls. Always. You know how careful he is about checking in since the accident. Let's give it a few more hours before we panic," Nora said, though Zoe detected a note of calculation in her voice. "I'll be home soon." By 7 p.m., with Dominic still unreachable, Nora made a show of calling the job site. No one had seen him. She called the police, reporting him missing, her voice appropriately concerned as she mentioned his history of mental health struggles after the accident years ago. "Sometimes when he's stressed, he can be unpredictable," she told the officer who came to take the report, while Zoe listened from the stairs. "With this big investor meeting tomorrow, he's been under so much pressure. I'm worried he might have, I don't know, done something impulsive." The police took the report, but weren't overly concerned. Adult men disappeared briefly all the time, usually returning with sheepish explanations. They promised to keep an eye out for his truck. At 10:13 p.m., everything changed. A state trooper found Dominic's abandoned truck at Rockport Cliffs. The engine cold, the doors unlocked, his wallet inside. A single boot print at the cliff edge. When the police called Nora, Zoe was ready. She recorded every word of her mother's reaction. The gasp that came just a beat too late. The trembling voice that didn't match her steady hands. "Oh my God," Nora breathed into the phone. "Not the cliffs. He wouldn't. He couldn't have." Then, the performance began in earnest. "It's my fault. We've been fighting. He threatened once that if I ever left him, he'd take Zoe and disappear. I should have told someone." Zoe's blood ran cold at how easily her mother fabricated this narrative, painting Dominic as unstable, controlling, potentially violent, setting the stage for exactly what Hayes had suggested, making him look unbalanced enough that no one would question if he had an accident. The search began at first light. Coast Guard vessels patrolled the waters below the cliffs. News crews arrived by mid-morning. The story was irresistible. Successful businessman, past trauma, mysterious disappearance. And at the center of it all, Nora Mercer played her role perfectly, the worried wife, hinting at marital problems, suggesting her husband's fragile mental state while appearing to defend him. "Dominic is a good man," she told a reporter, tears streaming down her face. "He's just been under tremendous pressure. With his history, after the accident years ago, sometimes he doesn't think clearly." Standing beside her mother during this interview, Zoe fought to maintain her own role, the devastated daughter. Inside, she seethed with a fury that matched her father's. Meanwhile, in his rented cabin, Dominic watched the coverage on a small television, his face grim. Nora was following Hayes' playbook exactly, subtly assassinating Dominic's character while appearing to support him. By the time they found him, if they ever did, his reputation would be destroyed. The investors would flee. Hayes and Nora would swoop in to save what remained of his business. And somehow, in their twisted plan, they'd use this to justify sending Zoe away. "Not happening," Dominic muttered to the empty room. He checked his watch. Soon, Zoe would make her move, the most dangerous part of their plan. Chapter 6. The Recording. By Friday morning, the search for Dominic Mercer had intensified. Divers were preparing to search the waters near Rockport Cliffs, though the rocky conditions and strong currents made everyone pessimistic about finding anything. Abbott Hayes had inserted himself into the situation with practiced concern, staying close to Nora, speaking softly to police about his friend's recent behavior. He'd even postponed the investor dinner, explaining that, of course, finding Dominic is the priority now. Zoe watched it all with growing disgust. The way Hayes touched her mother's arm consolingly. The private whispers when they thought she wasn't looking. The calculated glances at the extensive property maps in her father's office when the police brought them home. That afternoon, Zoe enacted the next phase of their plan. With tear-streaked face, she asked Hayes for a moment alone. "I know you and my mom are close," she said, her voice small. "There's something I need to tell someone, and I don't think I can tell her." Hayes sat beside her on the porch swing, the perfect picture of compassionate concern. "Of course, Zoe. You can tell me anything. Last night, I heard Mom on the phone after the police left. She sounded happy. She said, 'It's working perfectly. We'll have everything clear by next week.'" Hayes stiffened almost imperceptibly. "I'm sure you misunderstood. Your mother is devastated." "Is she?" Zoe's eyes hardened slightly. "Because she's been different lately. Secretive. And I found something in her office." She pulled out her phone, pressed play on a recording. Not the damning kitchen conversation, but an earlier, more ambiguous one where Nora and Hayes discussed making changes and removing obstacles. "Where did you get this?" Hayes demanded, his compassionate mask slipping. "I've been recording things. I was going to show Dad, but now." She let tears fill her eyes. What did she mean by removing obstacles? Was she talking about my dad? Hayes recovered quickly, his smile returning. "Oh, Zoe, this is just business talk. Your mother and I are working on a real estate project. The obstacles are zoning issues, permits, adult things you don't need to worry about." Then why was she happy on the phone last night? "My dad is missing. Grief makes people act strangely sometimes," Hayes said smoothly. "Now, I think you should give me that phone. These recordings might upset your mother during this difficult time." He reached for the phone, but Zoe was faster, pulling back. "No, I'm keeping it." Hayes' face hardened for a split second before he forced another smile. "Of course, it's your property, but perhaps we should tell your mother about your concerns. Clear the air." Exactly as they predicted. Hayes would tell Nora about the recording, and they would need to neutralize this new threat. "I don't want to upset her," Zoe said, appearing to waffle. "It's the right thing to do," Hayes insisted, standing. "In fact, let's talk to her now. She's in your father's office." Reluctantly, Zoe followed him inside. Nora was indeed in Dominic's office, examining his business contracts with a focus that belied her supposedly grief-stricken state. "Nora, we have a situation," Hayes said without preamble. "Zoe has been recording our conversations. She has concerns about what we've been discussing." Nora's face drained of color. "What? Zoe, how could you spy on me?" Zoe let her genuine anger surface. "How could you be in here going through Dad's papers while he's missing? Maybe dead." "I'm trying to keep his business affairs in order," Nora said quickly. "Someone has to step in," Make sure everything continues running. After 2 days? Zoe challenged. The police haven't even stopped searching yet. Zoe, Hayes interrupted, his voice dangerously soft. Why don't you give your mother and me a moment? This is a difficult time for everyone. So you can plan your next move? Zoe fired back. I heard you in the kitchen, talking about drugging my dad, making him look crazy before your big investor meeting. The blood drained from both their faces. That's ridiculous, Nora stammered. You're upset, imagining things. I recorded it, Zoe said flatly. Every word. About the pills, the plan B, sending me to Westridge Academy while you start your new life in California with my dad's money. Hayes recovered first. Nora, she's clearly distraught, making up stories. I sent the recording to Dad's email. Zoe continued relentlessly. And to Miguel. And to Dad's lawyer. So even if something happens to me, people will know. Nothing is going to happen to you. Nora said sharply, then softened her tone. Sweetheart, you're confused. We're all upset about your father. Stop lying. Zoe shouted. You're not upset. You're relieved. You two planned this somehow, and I'm going to prove it. She stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. In the hallway, she pressed against the wall, listening. Hayes' voice, urgent and low. She doesn't have anything concrete. It's her word against ours. She said she recorded us in the kitchen. Nora hissed. About the pills, Abbott. About the plan. She's bluffing. And even if she's not, we can say it was taken out of context. Business discussions she misunderstood. A pause. The more immediate problem is that she's a liability now. We need to accelerate the timetable. How? Dominic is already gone. Yes, but not in the way we planned. This cliff scenario actually works better for us, but we need to make sure he stays gone. If they find a body, case closed. If not, we need a contingency. Nora's voice, shaky now. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that a grieving teenage girl who's lost her father might act irrationally. Might run away. Might even harm herself. Abbott, no? She's my daughter. She's a complication, Nora. One that now threatens everything. The California deal, our future. Everything. I won't hurt my own child. No one's talking about hurting her. Just containing the situation. My contact at Westridge could expedite her admission. Emergency family circumstances. A secure facility where she could receive treatment for her delusions about her mother. You want to have her committed? She's not crazy. No, but grieving teenagers who make wild accusations sometimes need specialized care. For their own protection. The silence that followed chilled Zoe to her core. Her mother was actually considering it. Finally, Nora spoke. Let me talk to her first. She trusts me, deep down. I can convince her she misheard things, that grief is affecting her judgment. And if you can't, another pause. Then we'll discuss alternatives. Zoe had heard enough. She slipped away to her room, locked the door, and sent a text to the burner phone Miguel had provided to Dominic. They know I have recordings. Hayes suggested having me committed for treatment. Mom hesitant, but didn't say no. Plan working, but accelerating. In his cabin hideaway, Dominic read the message with cold fury. They were now targeting Zoe directly. It was time for the next phase. Earlier than planned, but necessary. He replied, stay in your room with door locked. Tell them you're not feeling well. Miguel coming in 30 minutes with breaking news about me. Be ready. Exactly 28 minutes later, Miguel's truck roared into the Mercer's driveway. He pounded on the front door, his face a mask of excitement and concern. Nora answered, Hayes hovering behind her. Miguel? What is it? They found something at the cliffs, he said breathlessly. A fisherman saw someone matching Dominic's description yesterday afternoon, miles from where his truck was found. Said the man seemed disoriented, was asking about boats to the islands. Yesterday, Nora's voice faltered. But his truck was found Wednesday night. Police think he might have abandoned it deliberately, then stayed hidden. They're organizing a new search area. They want Zoe to come to the station, see if she can think of any places her father might go if he was, not thinking clearly. I'll get her, Hayes said quickly, heading for the stairs. Actually, Miguel interjected. They specifically asked for Mrs. Mercer to bring her. Police protocol or something. The glance that passed between Hayes and Nora spoke volumes. Of course, Nora said smoothly. Let me get my purse and tell Zoe. As she ascended the stairs, Miguel watched Hayes with barely concealed contempt. The gallery owner fidgeted, clearly uncomfortable with this new development. Strange business, All this, Miguel said conversationally. Dominic's never struck me as the type to crack under pressure. We all have our breaking points, Hayes replied stiffly. True enough. Still, Cliff's a dramatic choice, don't you think? For a man who survived worse. Hayes didn't respond. His attention focused on Nora returning with a pale-faced Zoe. Ready? Miguel asked, his eyes communicating silently with Zoe. Follow the plan. As they drove away, Hayes watched from the porch, phone already at his ear. In the truck, Zoe glanced at her mother in the passenger seat, then at Miguel. We're not really going to the police station, are we? Not exactly, Miguel replied, turning not toward town but toward the coastal highway heading south. Your father is waiting. What? Nora exclaimed. Dominic's alive? Where has he been? What's going on? That's what we'd all like to know, Mrs. Mercer, Miguel said coldly. Especially the part where you and Hayes planned to drug your husband and have him committed or killed. Nora's face went from shocked to calculating in an instant. Zoe's been telling you ridiculous stories. She's been so upset about her father's disappearance. Save it, Miguel interrupted. I've heard the recordings. We all have, including the police. What recordings? Nora demanded, though her voice lacked conviction. All of them, Zoe said quietly. Every conversation you had with Hayes about getting rid of Dad, about sending me away, about stealing everything and running off to California. Nora turned to her daughter, real fear in her eyes now. Zoe, you don't understand. Abbott and I, it's complicated. Your father has been distant for years. He's buried himself in work, left me alone. So you decided to bury him for real? Miguel's voice was hard as steel. Plan a nice little accident after drugging him at your investor dinner? That's not. We weren't. Nora faltered. We have it all on tape, Mom, Zoe said, her voice breaking slightly. Everything. And now Dad wants to talk to you. Before we go to the police. Nora fell silent, her mind visibly racing for a way out. But as Miguel's truck wound along the coastal road toward the secluded cabin where Dominic waited, she seemed to deflate, the realization sinking in that her carefully constructed plan had collapsed entirely. What she didn't yet realize was that Dominic's counterplan was just beginning. The commander hadn't just been hiding. He'd been preparing a strategy that would destroy not only Nora and Hayes' scheme, but everything they thought they knew about the man they'd tried to eliminate. Chapter 7. Confrontation. The cabin was modest, a hunter's retreat nestled among pines overlooking a small, secluded cove. As Miguel's truck approached, Dominic watched from the window, his face expressionless despite the storm raging within him. Seeing Nora emerge from the truck, looking not frightened but calculating, crystallized everything for him. This woman, whom he'd once loved enough to build a life with, had plotted his destruction. He opened the door before they reached it. Come in, Nora. We need to talk. She flinched at the sight of him, not with relief that he was alive, but with the shock of seeing her plans unraveled. Dominic, she breathed. Thank God you're safe. We've been so worried. Stop. His voice cut like a blade. No more lies. Not here. Inside, the cabin was spartanly furnished, a table, chairs, a wood stove providing warmth against the autumn chill. On the table lay folders, a laptop, and several recording devices. Miguel nodded to Dominic. I'll wait outside with Zoe. No. Dominic and Zoe said simultaneously. I want to be here, Zoe insisted. I need to hear everything. Dominic studied his daughter, her determined stance, the set of her jaw so like his own. She stays, he decided. She's earned that right. Nora sat stiffly at the table, her elegant facade beginning to crack. What is this, Dominic? Some kind of kidnapping? You disappeared. Let us think you were dead, and now you're holding me against my will. Against your will? He asked mildly. Miguel told you where you were going. You got in the truck voluntarily. The door isn't locked. You're free to leave, though I wouldn't recommend walking back to town in those shoes. Her eyes darted to the door, then back to him. Fine. Say what you need to say so we can end this ridiculous charade. Charade. He repeated, the word heavy with irony. Interesting choice. Let's talk about charades, Nora. Like pretending to be a grieving wife while actually celebrating that your husband might be dead. That's not. Or how about pretending to care about our daughter while planning to ship her off to a boarding school once I was out of the picture? His voice remained steady, controlled. You don't understand, Nora began, shifting strategies. Abbott Hayes isn't who you think he is. He manipulated me, made me believe things. Like the fact that drugging me and staging an accident would give you control of my assets? That part wasn't clear enough. Dominic opened a folder, removed a printed transcript. Here's you, in our kitchen, discussing dosage. And here's Hayes confirming it would make me completely erratic before my convenient accident. Nora paled. It was just talk. We were never going to. The pills ground into powder in your desk drawer suggest otherwise, Zoe interrupted, unable to contain herself. The ones you were planning to put in Dad's drink at the investor dinner. Dominic looked at his daughter with a mixture of pride and sadness. No child should have to uncover such betrayal. Why, Nora? He asked quietly. We built a life together. After the accident, when I was at my lowest, you stood by me. Was that all just calculation too? Were you waiting for the right moment even then? Something flickered in Nora's eyes, perhaps the first genuine emotion. No. Back then, it was real. But you changed after the recovery. Became obsessed with the business, with rebuilding your reputation. I became peripheral. So instead of talking to me, asking for what you needed, you decided to destroy me? To take everything, including my daughter? Our daughter, Nora corrected automatically. The daughter you were willing to institutionalize when she became inconvenient, Dominic countered. The one you called an obstacle to your fresh start. Nora's composure finally cracked. What do you want from me, Dominic? An apology? Fine, I'm sorry. I got caught up in something that spiraled out of control. Abbott convinced me you'd never give me a fair settlement, that the prenup would leave me with nothing after all these years of supporting you. So this was about money? About the prenup? Partly, she admitted, and partly about feeling alive again. You have no idea what it's like living with the great Dominic Mercer. Always perfect, always in control. The commander, she said mockingly. Do you know what it's like living in your shadow? Being Mrs. Mercer instead of Nora? So you found identity in betrayal, he said flatly. In plotting my demise with a con man. Abbott is not. Hayes has done this before, Dominic interrupted, opening another folder. Boston, 2017. New York, 2019. Different names, but same pattern. Charm wealthy or well-connected women, isolate them from family, use them to access investment opportunities, then disappear when the money does. He slid photos across the table, Hayes with different women, newspaper clippings about investment schemes gone wrong. Nora stared at the evidence, genuine shock registering on her face. How did you? While you were planning my destruction, I was investigating his past. These women thought they knew him too. They also thought they were special, the ones he really loved. Dominic's voice remained dispassionate. One lost her family's business. Another lost her home. A third lost custody of her children when she had a breakdown after he disappeared with her money. He wouldn't. Nora began, but her protest died on her lips as she continued staring at the evidence. He was using you, Mom, Zoe said softly. He never cared about you. Only what you could give him access to. Nora looked up, tears finally forming. What happens now? Police? Public humiliation? Is that your revenge? Dominic studied her for a long moment. My first instinct was exactly that. Have you arrested for conspiracy? Watch your reputation collapse along with Hayes. But there would be collateral damage. He glanced at Zoe. Our daughter doesn't deserve to have her mother in prison, no matter what you've done. Hope flickered in Nora's eyes. So I'm offering you a choice. He removed a document from the final folder. Option 1, we go public. The recordings, the evidence of your plot with Hayes, everything. You face criminal charges, and I file for divorce with full custody of Zoe, citing your attempt to harm me and institutionalize her. Nora's face hardened. And option 2, you sign this. He pushed the document across the table. A divorce agreement I've had drawn up. You get a fair settlement, not what the prenup would provide, but enough to start over. In exchange, you relinquish all claims to my business, the house, and... He paused, the hardest part still to say. You agree to give me full custody of Zoe, with supervised visitation only. You can't be serious, Nora whispered. You're taking my daughter. The daughter you were willing to send away? Zoe asked bitterly. The one you and Hayes called an anchor? I never would have gone through with that, Nora protested. I was just playing along with Abbott until I figured things out. You expect us to believe that? Dominic asked. After everything we've heard? Nora looked from Dominic to Zoe, the full weight of her actions finally seeming to register. I do love you, Zoe. Despite everything, You have to believe that. Actions speak louder than words, Mom. And your actions showed exactly how much I mattered to you and Hayes. Dominic pushed a pen across the table. Your choice, Nora. Public disgrace and possible prison, or a quiet divorce with a fair settlement. And what about Hayes? She asked, her voice small. Hayes will get what's coming to him, regardless of your decision. Dominic's tone left no doubt that the gallery owner's fate was sealed. But your choice determines whether you go down with him. Nora picked up the pen, her hand trembling slightly. I never meant for it to go this far. You have to believe that. Maybe someday I will, Dominic said, though his eyes remained cold. But not today. As Nora signed the papers, Zoe turned away, tears streaming silently down her face. Not for the mother who had betrayed her, but for the family that had been irreparably broken, not by Dominic's disappearance, but by the truth that had emerged from it. Outside the cabin, Miguel waited by his truck, a burner phone in his hand. With a nod from Dominic through the window, he dialed. It's time, he said simply to the person on the other end. Proceed with Hayes. Chapter 8, Public Reckoning. While Dominic confronted Nora at the cabin, a different drama was unfolding in Harborview. Detective Lillian Voss had received an anonymous package that morning, recordings, transcripts, and financial records detailing Abbott Hayes' history of fraud across 3 states. Most damning were the recordings of Hayes and Nora Mercer discussing their plan to drug Dominic, stage his psychological collapse, and eventually cause an accident during his business trip. Voss, a 20-year veteran with piercing eyes and a reputation for relentlessness, had been watching Hayes since he arrived in Harborview. Something about his polished facade had never sat right with her. Now, she had the evidence she needed. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Hayes had organized a press conference at his gallery, ostensibly to appeal for information about Dominic's disappearance, but really to position himself as the concerned family friend who would help Nora through this difficult time. News crews from Portland and even Boston had arrived, drawn by the story of the prominent businessman's mysterious disappearance. Hayes stood at a podium before the gallery, his expression a masterpiece of grave concern. Dominic Mercer is not just a business associate, but a friend, he told the assembled reporters. His disappearance has devastated our community, especially his wife Nora and daughter Zoe. I've established a reward fund for information leading to his whereabouts, and the gallery will be hosting a benefit exhibition next month to support the ongoing search efforts. The reporters ate it up, the generous gallery owner, stepping in to support the family of the missing man. Hayes fielded questions with practiced charm, each answer further cementing his role as the town's compassionate benefactor. Where is Mrs. Mercer today? A reporter asked. Understandably, this has been incredibly difficult for her, Hayes replied smoothly. She's taking some private time with her daughter. I'm here representing the family's interests while they process this tragedy. As he continued speaking, Detective Voss moved through the crowd, accompanied by 2 uniformed officers. Her timing, like everything else in this operation, was precise. Just as Hayes reached the crescendo of his performance, describing how the community needed to come together in this difficult time, Voss stepped forward. Abbott Hayes, she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent gathering. I have some questions regarding your relationship with Nora Mercer and the disappearance of her husband. Hayes faltered for only a moment before recovering. Of course, Detective. I'm happy to help in any way I can. Perhaps after the press conference. Now would be better, Voss interrupted, stepping closer to the podium. Specifically, I'd like to ask about your conversations with Mrs. Mercer regarding drugging her husband and staging an accident during his business trip. The crowd of reporters erupted, cameras flashing as Hayes' face drained of color. I don't know what you're talking about, he managed, his smooth facade cracking. These are outrageous accusations. We have recordings, Mr. Hayes, Voss continued relentlessly. Quite detailed ones. About pills ground into powder. About making Mr. Mercer appear unstable before your investor meeting. About a plan B if the drugging didn't work. The press conference had transformed into something else entirely, the reporters now firing questions at Hayes, who stood frozen at the podium. Is it true you planned to harm Dominic Mercer? Were you having an affair with Nora Mercer? What do you know about his disappearance? As Hayes struggled to respond, Voss played a short clip from the recordings on her phone, Hayes' own voice filling the stunned silence. Trust me, This will make him lose control completely. A public meltdown, followed by a convenient accident during his trip. With his history, no one will question it. The gallery owner's face contorted with rage and panic. That's taken out of context. Nora and I were discussing a fictional scenario, a thriller novel she was thinking of writing. And what about Boston, Mr. Hayes? Voss pressed. Or was it Stephen Hayward there? In New York, where you went by Albert Hastings? Were those fictional scenarios too? As the officers moved toward him, Hayes made a desperate break for the gallery door. He made it 3 steps before being tackled to the ground, the cameras capturing every moment of his undignified apprehension. Detective Voss approached the fallen man, handcuffs ready. Abbott Hayes, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and a host of other charges we'll sort out at the station. As the officers led Hayes away through the crowd of shouting reporters, no one noticed Miguel's truck pulling up at the edge of the gathering. No one saw Dominic Mercer step out, very much alive, with his daughter at his side. Dominic surveyed the chaos with grim satisfaction. Hayes was getting exactly what he deserved: public humiliation followed by legal destruction. The investigators would find the additional evidence Dominic had arranged to be discovered at Hayes' apartment: records of his previous schemes, contacts for the fraudulent California development, even the remainder of the ground pills intended for Dominic. But the true masterstroke was still to come. Dominic took Zoe's hand. Ready? She nodded, her young face set with determination. Ready. Together, they walked through the crowd, which parted instinctively before realizing who stood among them. Then the shouts began. It's Mercer. He's alive. Dominic Mercer. The reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, questions overlapping in a cacophony of confusion and excitement. Dominic raised a hand, his commanding presence instantly creating a pocket of silence. I understand you all have questions. I'll address them shortly. First, I need to speak with Detective Voss. He moved through the crowd with Zoe, approaching Voss as she finished directing her officers. Mr. Mercer, she said, not looking particularly surprised. I see reports of your demise were greatly exaggerated. As were reports of my mental instability, he replied. I believe you received my package? Voss nodded. Comprehensive work, almost as if it was prepared by someone who knew exactly what was being planned. I had help, Dominic said, squeezing Zoe's hand. My daughter discovered the plot and recorded several key conversations. Once I understood what Hayes and my wife were planning, I decided to give them what they wanted: my disappearance, but on my terms. A dangerous game, Voss observed. If you'd been wrong about their intentions. I wasn't wrong, Dominic said flatly. The evidence is conclusive. And Mrs. Mercer? Will she be joining her partner in custody? Dominic glanced at Zoe, then back to the detective. My wife has agreed to cooperate fully with your investigation of Hayes. She's made choices she'll have to live with, but for our daughter's sake, I've offered her an alternative to public prosecution. Voss studied him thoughtfully. That's unusually merciful, given the circumstances. Not merciful, Dominic corrected. Strategic. My daughter has lost enough without adding a mother in prison to her burdens. Understanding passed between them, the kind that exists between people who calculate their moves carefully, who see several steps ahead on the chessboard. I'll need your official statement, Voss said finally, and the originals of those recordings. You'll have everything you need, Dominic assured her. But first, I should address the press. The story is already spinning out of control. Voss nodded. Use the gallery steps. I'll have my officers maintain order. As Dominic and Zoe turned toward the waiting reporters, a police car pulled away carrying Abbott Hayes, the man who had so nearly destroyed them, now facing his own destruction. Standing on the steps of Hayes' gallery, the very place where the con man had planned to humiliate him before having him eliminated, Dominic addressed the crowd, his voice steady and authoritative. My name is Dominic Mercer. As you can see, I am very much alive. Contrary to appearances, I did not fall from Rockport Cliffs, nor did I have any kind of breakdown. What I did do was uncover a plot against my life, a plot orchestrated by Abbott Hayes and involving certain other parties who will be dealt with through proper legal channels. The reporters shouted questions, but Dominic continued, his commanding presence silencing them. When I discovered that Hayes and his accomplice planned to drug me, stage a public incident to question my mental stability, and potentially cause a fatal accident during my business trip, I made a strategic decision. I chose to disappear on my own terms, creating the illusion they wanted while gathering evidence of their conspiracy. He placed his arm around Zoe's shoulders. My daughter was instrumental in uncovering this plot. She recorded conversations detailing their plans, including their intention to send her away to boarding school once I was gone, clearing the path for them to liquidate my assets and flee to California. A reporter shouted, "Are you saying your wife was involved in this conspiracy?" Dominic's face remained impassive. "I'm saying that Abbott Hayes has a history of manipulating vulnerable women for financial gain. He has operated under multiple aliases in Boston and New York, leaving a trail of victims in his wake. The extent of others' involvement will be determined through proper investigation." Another called out, "Where is your wife now?" "My wife is cooperating with authorities," Dominic said carefully. "Beyond that, I have no comment on her whereabouts or status at this time. What happens next for you, Mr. Mercer?" At this, Dominic allowed himself a small smile. "What happens next is that I return to my life and my business. Mercer Construction has projects to complete, employees who depend on me. As for my personal life," he glanced at Zoe, "my priority is my daughter's well-being and healing our family from this betrayal." As the questions continued, Dominic maintained his controlled, measured responses. The commander had returned not as a man broken by betrayal, but as one tempered by it, stronger, more determined, and utterly in command of the narrative that would follow. By nightfall, Hayes' name was synonymous with treachery throughout New England. The story had gone national. The sophisticated con man, the fake art dealer, the plot against a successful businessman. What had begun as a local mystery of a missing contractor had transformed into a sensational tale of conspiracy and justice. And at the center of it all stood Dominic Mercer, no longer missing, no longer a victim, but the architect of a counter-strategy that had turned the tables on those who sought to destroy him. Chapter 9, Aftermath. 3 months after Abbott Hayes' arrest, Harborview had settled into its winter quiet. Snow blanketed the coastal town, transforming it into a postcard of New England serenity that belied the dramatic events of the fall. Hayes remained in custody, denied bail due to flight risk. His trial was scheduled for spring, though the evidence against him was so overwhelming that his attorney had already made overtures about a plea deal. The gallery stood empty, its contents seized to repay defrauded investors from his previous schemes. Nora had left town immediately after signing the divorce papers, taking Dominic's settlement and retreating to her sister's home in California. The rumors about her involvement with Hayes' plot had made her position in Harborview untenable, despite Dominic's refusal to publicly condemn her. For Zoe's sake, he had maintained that Nora had been manipulated by Hayes, a victim rather than a conspirator. Few believed it, but the fiction allowed Zoe to hold her head high at school, to say her mother had been deceived rather than admitting the harder truth, that Nora had chosen a new life and a stack of money over her own daughter. The Mercer home on the cliff had been sold, too many bitter memories lingering in its elegant rooms. Dominic and Zoe had moved to a simpler place near the harbor, a cottage with a wraparound porch and a direct view of the boats coming and going. On this particular February evening, Dominic sat on that porch despite the cold, watching his breath fog in the frigid air. Inside, Zoe was working on college applications, determined to graduate early and start the next chapter of her life. The sound of footsteps on the snowy path drew his attention. Detective Voss approached, bundled against the winter chill. "Evening, Mercer," she said, climbing the steps without waiting for an invitation. "Mind if I join you?" He gestured to the chair beside him. "What brings you out on a night like this, detective? Thought you'd want to know." Hayes took the deal. She settled into the chair, brushing snow from her coat. 15 years minimum. He's also giving up his partners from previous schemes, hoping for leniency. Partners? Dominic raised an eyebrow. He always worked alone from what we uncovered. Not entirely. Seems he had help laundering money, creating false identities. She paused. He also had interesting things to say about Nora. Dominic's jaw tightened. "I'm not interested in Hayes' attempts to spread blame. Even if he claims she was the architect, not the accomplice?" Voss challenged. "Even if he has evidence that she approached him, not the other way around." The silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant sound of waves against the harbor wall. "What kind of evidence?" Dominic finally asked. "Emails, dating back to before he even moved to Harborview. She found him, Dominic. researched his background, his methods, invited him here specifically to help her break free from you and the prenup. The revelation should have shocked him, but somehow, Dominic had suspected this from the moment Zoe first showed him her notebook. Nora's betrayal had been too calculated, too thorough to be the result of Hayes' manipulation alone. "Does this change anything legally?" he asked. Voss shook her head. "Not with the agreement you two made. She's cooperating against Hayes, and you've declined to press charges. But I thought you should know the truth." "Why?" "So I can feel justified in destroying her reputation after all. So you can stop carrying guilt that isn't yours to bear," Voss replied bluntly. "You've been protecting her for Zoe's sake, letting people believe she was another of Hayes' victims. That's admirable, but it's based on a lie." Dominic stared out at the dark water. "Some lies protect the innocent, and some just delay the inevitable." Voss stood, buttoning her coat against the winter wind. "Zoe will learn the truth eventually. Better she hears it from you than stumbles across it later." After Voss left, Dominic remained on the porch, turning her words over in his mind. Inside, he heard Zoe laughing on the phone with friends, a sound that had become more frequent lately as the wounds of the fall slowly healed. His phone buzzed with a text. Miguel, with an update on their newest project, converting Hayes' failed gallery into a community space for local artists. The irony wasn't lost on Dominic. Where Hayes had planned to build his escape on Dominic's destruction, Dominic was now building something positive from Hayes' downfall. The door opened behind him, and Zoe stepped out, wrapped in a blanket. "Isn't it too cold for brooding on the porch?" she asked, settling into the chair Voss had vacated. "The commander doesn't brood. He strategizes," Dominic replied with a small smile. "Well, can the commander strategize inside where it's warm? I made hot chocolate." "In a minute." He turned to face her fully. "Voss just left. Hayes took a plea deal." "Good." Zoe's face hardened momentarily, then softened. "That means no trial, right? No having to testify or hear all the details again. Right? It's over." He hesitated. "But she told me something else. About your mother." Zoe stiffened. "What about her?" "Hayes claims she was the mastermind, that she sought him out, knowing his history, specifically to help her escape the marriage and get around the prenup." To his surprise, Zoe didn't look shocked. "I kind of figured that," she said quietly. "Mom was always the planner in the family. Hayes didn't seem smart enough to come up with all of it on his own. Why didn't you say anything?" She shrugged, pulling the blanket tighter. "You've been trying so hard to protect her reputation, to give me some kind of mother to respect. I didn't want to ruin that for you." The realization that his daughter had been protecting him, rather than the other way around, struck Dominic with unexpected force. Through everything, the betrayal, the plan, the aftermath, Zoe had shown a strength and maturity that humbled him. "We don't need to protect each other from the truth," he said finally, "even when it's ugly." "Especially then," she agreed. "So what now? Are you going to tell people about Mom?" Dominic considered the question carefully. The commander in him wanted justice, wanted Nora to face the same public reckoning as Hayes. But the father in him recognized that such justice would come at Zoe's expense. "No," he decided. "What your mother did, she'll have to live with. Our job is to move forward, not look back." Zoe nodded, seemingly relieved. "Speaking of moving forward, I got an early acceptance letter from Boston University today. Full scholarship." Pride swelled in Dominic's chest. "That's amazing, Zoe. Why didn't you tell me right away?" "You were busy looking mysterious and thoughtful on the porch," she teased, then grew serious. "Also, I wasn't sure how you'd feel about me leaving so soon." "I feel incredibly proud," he said honestly. "And yes, I'll miss you like crazy, but you've more than earned this opportunity." They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, watching the snow drift down onto the harbor. "You know," Zoe said finally, "for all her plotting, Mom miscalculated one major thing." "What's that?" "She thought you were the same man from 6 years ago, the one who lost control after the accident. She thought you'd react with rage, play right into their hands." Zoe's green eyes, so like her mother's yet so different in their warmth, met his. She never understood that surviving that time made you stronger, not weaker. Dominic had never thought of it that way, but Zoe was right. The darkness he'd faced after the accident had forced him to develop discipline, to channel his emotions productively rather than destructively. If he'd remained the volatile man he once was, Hayes and Nora's plan might well have succeeded. "We should both remember that," he said thoughtfully. Sometimes the hardest experiences forge the strongest people. Zoe nodded, then stood. Very profound. Now can we please go inside before we freeze to these chairs? The hot chocolate is getting cold, and I need your help with my scholarship acceptance letter. As they headed inside to the warmth of their new home, Dominic felt a sense of peace he hadn't expected to find again. The betrayal had cut deep, but in its aftermath, he discovered something precious: the unbreakable bond with his daughter and the knowledge that together they could weather any storm. In the harbor below, the winter waves crashed against the shore, relentless, powerful, but ultimately shaping rather than destroying. Much like the events that had tested the Mercers, leaving them not broken, but reshaped into something stronger than before. The final scene played out 3 days later, when a reporter approached Dominic outside his office. "Mr. Mercer, we've received information that your ex-wife was actually the initiator of the plot against you. Would you care to comment?" Dominic looked into the camera, knowing his words would reach Nora wherever she was hiding. The commander calculated his response carefully, weighing justice against mercy, retribution against peace. "My ex-wife made choices she'll have to live with," he said finally, "just as I've had to live with mine. The difference is, I can face myself in the mirror each morning knowing I protected what matters most: my family, my integrity, my future." He paused, his gaze unwavering. "I wish her the strength to face whatever reflection awaits her." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving the past behind with each deliberate step. Ahead lay a future forged in fire, harder, clearer, and ultimately unbreakable. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.